Bryan Broaddus, kind enough to join us on a Friday from Oxnard, California, here on your home of the boys, 105.3 The Fan, sitting down in the Wild Fork Foods hot seat, and also brought to you by RJ's Next Neighborhood, Treeline by Hillwood. And yesterday I was driving to pick up my kids from school, and I was just listening. I was just listening to Broaddus being his natural habitat, just loving and soaking up all the football that was taking place during the G-Bag Nation. Good morning, man. How are you?
Doing excellent, boys. How about yourselves?
Is that the Super Bowl ring that you're wearing?
Yeah, 1996.
Look at that.
Always flexing.
All right.
Who do you need to...
It reminds me one time in my life I was a winner. That reminds me the one time I was a winner.
Hey, I told you you're a YouTube winner for our 840 segment, okay? So put that right next to the Super Bowl ring with the numbers that you're generating.
Did you wear that just to check chill at practice to be like, if he says anything to you, you can just show it to him?
No, the head coach asked anybody that had a Super Bowl ring to show up and wear them. So remember he said, hey, if you're coming around the facility, wear your Super Bowl ring. We need to see these things. So I'm just trying to help the head coach out.
Your top 3 favorite wrestlers ever?
I'm not a wrestling fan. If you want me, I could go all the way back to the 70s because at the Sportatorium, there was like Ivan Putski, Flying Red Bastien, Fritz von Erich. I watched wrestling when the dudes had the high black boots and the trunks, and then there was Jimmy Snuka. He was like the most athletic of the wrestlers. Like, he would cut his head, he'd bleed profusely, and then he would finish off the top rope. That kind of, but yeah, I wasn't in that era where they were starting out. Well, I lived through that era, but the WrestleManias and stuff. But somebody told me, like, when we had it at AT&T, all my buddies at DallasCowboys.com are like, Broaddus, you missed it. You missed out. That was some of the most fun we've ever had at the stadium.
Yeah.
When it came to all that, it's quite a show for sure. But and there's people that are very passionate about it. Very passionate about it.
Yes. Yesterday, it looked like the Cowboys were very passionate at practice. I was loving the highlights of the feistiness that came out of that back and forth. Just give us some highlights or observations of practice.
Yeah, I know you and I were talking about earlier, and I don't know if you're going to ask me about what I think about run game stuff.
Yeah.
But I'll save that then for when your question starts. But I think what I'm really noticing, and I think you guys will see this when you come out here this weekend, is that usually you'll have practices where one position group or one unit dominates the other one, and it's kind of, man, the defense is not looking very good today. Boy, the offense just can't get it going. And why there's so much feistiness here is this thing is really going from series to series. There will be an offensive play where it's a Pickens Lamb large run by Sanders, and then all of a sudden the next play will be a tip pass, a ball get knocked out, a fumble, an interception. So what you're really having is it's really interesting to watch because it's so competitive. But like I said, series to series, because it's like not one group is dominating the other during the practice, and you get a lot out of that watching practice. I'm looking forward to seeing these guys in full pads. I think it's going to have a little bit of a flair to it, what we used to have with Jason Garrett, where there were more physical practices. They were more intense. There was more one-on-one stuff. I think this coach right here, as fun as he talks about being, I think he's got some of his dad in him, where he wants to come out and have that type of practice.
Because of all y'all's draft homework and all that time you put into it, I have been saying it feels like Donovan Ezaraku is already going to, I just have it set in my mind he's going to be a player, and it sounded like he had a hell of a practice.
He's had 3 really good ones, and Bobby could attest to this because he's watched the tape on him as well. Oh. This kid is a very natural pass rusher. And the learning curve for him was not going to be, if you started talking about the top pass rushers in the draft, he was one of the top 3. When you talked about bend, ability to finish at the quarterback, his ability to break down blockers. He's got a veteran presence to him the way he plays, and he's got a little bit of an awareness to him. They tried to throw a screen to him off the right side, and he was like, he kind of, instead of flying up the field, he saw back to his side, and he saw the lineman start to move, and he says, boy, I haven't seen this one before. And he took off and then got up the field to beat the block, and now it's a play that could have gone for a few yards ends up being a loss of 6 because he's right there. So it doesn't matter. I mean, it's not like he's having success against backup guys. He's having success. Anybody that lines up across from him, he is having some success. Dak threw an interception yesterday down in the red zone. The play would have likely ended up a sack by Ezeiruaku because he was that quick off the ball. I looked at Todd Archer. I said, was he offsides? He says, you see a flag on the field from the official? I said, no, I don't. So here we go. It's that's the kind of player he is.
Hey, you mentioned the Dak interception.
Yeah.
We were talking about some, camp interceptions. Do you kind of scoff at camp interceptions because
they're a problem. They're a problem. Yeah. No, it's a problem when you have them. Any turnover, it's encouraging to see the defense create turnovers, and then you wonder why, okay, how that happened. Dak had an interception the other day with Elam, and he didn't see Elam. He didn't see him. And he went up to Elam afterwards and what coverage were you in? What did you see from me to make you get into that throwing line? Elam is a veteran player. Has he had a lot of success? No. But he's smart. He's savvy. He looks at splits. He sees where you're lying. He'll line up inside if you feel like, man, you're too far outside. You're about to take this route inside. He's that kind of guy. So when he makes this interception, you're kind of going, okay, Dak didn't see him. There was a good disguise, or he came off his guy in order to make that play. Joe Milton had an interception yesterday that was just an awful throw. I mean, it was just he's trying to throw the ball to Schoonmaker inside down to the goal line, and he had no business throwing the ball there. And it just, it so happens that they get an interception on the play. So, yeah, interceptions are bad, Choppy, because after it happens, everybody kind of looks at each other like, oh, what coverage were they in, and what was he looking at? And these are guys he works out against every single day, these quarterbacks. So you should know a little bit of the tendencies of the guys you're playing against. But when that happens, it's a little bit of shock to the system.
So you're not equating it to like a spring training pitcher just working on some stuff to experiment with.
No, man. Your job is to read and get the ball to where it needs to be. And there's plenty of times where it's good. There's plenty of times where there's a throw like, Joe Milton, they ran an RPO yesterday, and Joe Milton has been running the ball. He's been pulling it and running it with some success. And Tyrus Wheat gets to the outside and kind of cuts him off. And Milton makes he's like, okay, I can't run. But then he's got Turpin flying across the field. He stops and just sidearms it, in between the defenders. And you're going, okay, there you go. That's the kind of stuff, you're working on things, but, your job is also, though, get the ball where you need to get it. If you read the defense wrong, that's something that can't happen in a game. I mean, you gotta be on point when this is all going down.
Bryan Broaddus joining us here on 105 through the Fan. Okay, Bryan, I'm going to ask you a question. Before I do, I'm going to maybe mix it up with you a little bit on the last couple things we've talked about. I just have a question for you first. You're not saying that, or you're saying that interceptions during these periods matter when you're talking about the types of interceptions they are, right? Because to me, there are instances where the offense is we're running this and we need to see this outcome. Or in this instance, you've got Eberflus in here and it's a new defense, and there's naturally going to be stuff they haven't seen from the defense before. And so there is going to be stuff that, this is brand new, I've never seen this before.
Yeah, but it's their job. Like I say, this is a 10-year veteran, and and Joe Milton's been in the league now a couple of years. I'm just saying, though, there's things as a veteran, and they're going to make mistakes, Bobby. And again, I appreciate your defense of Dak Prescott.
That was a Dak defense. That was a process defense.
No, I'm just saying, though, to me, we go through practices where they're really pretty plays. There's some really well-designed stuff. And I don't think it's just we're looking at it. I mean, they created a situation yesterday, and this is what I appreciate starting to be about with this coach, is they run a two-man screen with Hunter Lipke and Williams going outside, and what does it do? It stretches the defense, and now Ferguson just curls back inside, an easy throw for Dak. He's trying to make easy throws for Dak. That I appreciate about him. But, yeah, when the quarterback gets fooled and he's a 10-year vet, and it happens a couple of times in a practice, you're kind of going, what is he seeing? There's been questions, Bobby, and you even have to admit this. Mm-hmm. Some of his worst interceptions have been when he is not correctly
Tunnel vision is his biggest problem.
That's a big issue for him. When he is going to have problems, it's when he doesn't correctly pre-snap read a defense.
Yeah, tunnel vision is his biggest problem when he's going through his progressions, and then just not seeing a defender, being so like just seeing guys on the periphery that are basically squatting, waiting for him. You mentioned Kaiir Elam, who he's had high praise pretty much throughout the offseason practices. He continues to sound like impress out here. Yeah. Is he the leader on the list of guys, and maybe who are some of the others of the guys that you are most critical Sunday for? Does this look different when the pads come on? Do you fall back when the pads come on?
You know, he's every time the media has had an opportunity to watch a practice, they've come away saying that he's made a play. I'll give you an example. The one opportunity that I had for an OTA observation was they put Lamb in the slot and they put a tight end on the outside. So they tried to create width again and then run Lamb vertically, and then Kaiir was able to stay with Lamb, turn, and find the ball. Then he got an interception. He didn't, Lamb couldn't separate him. They tried to do it by scheme to get Lamb one-on-one, and they thought they were going to be able to get him on somebody that couldn't cover him. But Eberflus adjusted by putting Elam over there, and Elam was able to run with him. And then you see him make the interception that way. This, to me, is when they start in Philadelphia, it's likely going to be Bland on one side, Elam on the other would be my absolute guess right now.
Bryan Broaddus joining us from Oxnard here on 105.3 The Fan. How much is it harming the football team and Micah that he's not practicing?
Well, they're getting to look at Fowler and Sam Williams and some others. I mean, they're actually trying to do some things. Micah is really good on the double A gap blitz that Mike Zimmer was able to use him on last year. I think this is something that Eberflus has watched tape and said, we need to get Micah involved this way, let him attack the guard, let him attack the center, and then see if he can continue to generate pressures that way. But yeah, you can't work on things like that. The only real question is Micah has not been noticeable on the field as far as, being like, cheerleader guy or over there with him. As a matter of fact, he was signing autographs while they were practicing the other day. He was over there hanging out doing that. So does it hurt him? Yeah, it hurts him because Eberflus, but the show goes on. The coaches always say, hey, we practice with who we have here practicing. But it hasn't become a distraction yet to where there looks like there's just the defense is completely, they created some pressures yesterday. They absolutely created some pressures yesterday, and a lot of it had to do with what Eberflus and those guys were able to do.
I was listening to yesterday on G-Bag break down the run scheme and what you were picking up so far from it. Can you just reset that for our audience?
Yeah, to me, it's going to be a power gap run scheme is what it's going to be, and I think they're taking some pages out of how San Francisco runs the ball. When San Francisco runs, there's teams that play with a college offense. I think that's like the Arizona Cardinals. I think the Washington Commanders are a college offense. I think the Baltimore Ravens are a college offense. 49ers power gap run scheme where you play with the fullback, you play with movement, you get hip to hip. I went down and I was watching the drills and how they're running the ball and how they're having some success running the ball the last 3 days has been hip to hip with the blockers. You push the tackle, and then when you feel like you have the tackle secure, you get off onto the second level. But that's really what they're trying to do. It's been a lot more. Their outside run game stuff has been more like the toss or like the handoffs or the RPOs that we talked about. But when they've run the ball with some success, it's been the power gap scheme where they're trying to get bodies at the point of attack. Again, push hip to hip, secure the down lineman, and drive that guy into the linebacker, separate, and then let the back make the cut.
You're a beast. Thank you for making this extra time. We'll see you in a couple days. Can't wait.
Sounds good. Thanks, boys.